Welcome to this super, super special experience and episode of this show, the CEO Crowd. We are joined today. It's not just me today, y'all. We are joined today by Parinaz Shams, one of my sweet friends and my wisest mentors, one of the wisest souls I know. And Parinaz is a spiritual mentor with a really keen focus on embrace your essence. If you follow along with her, all of her links will be in the show notes, then you'll see this concept of embrace your essence come up oh so much. And I think I could rant and rave about how much I love this woman, or we could just introduce you. So first of all, Parinaz, welcome. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for being who you are. It's inspiring to connect with you each time that we talk. So I am a spiritual mentor, and I do feel like my greatest passion in life and also my calling in life is to help people embrace what lives at their essence. I do strongly believe that we have an essential self, a core self, and that essential self lives deep, deep within you, sometimes so deep it feels like it's not the part of you that you experience on the day-to-day life. It might not feel like it lives on the surface. And when we live in that way of not being consciously connected to our essential self, our deepest core, we experience things in life like relationship struggles, where people don't seem to really see, value, or respect the real us. We experience struggles in our career path, feeling like we really have a purpose. And we might just burn out and feel like we give too much of ourselves. Or we might bounce around from one career to the next, never allowing ourselves the opportunity to settle in and really watch ourselves blossom. When we're not connected to our essential self, we can also just experience in our own body this disconnect in the form of chronic illness, chronic pain, inflammation to your gut. I lived with that for years. And if you're in a female body, this can often manifest in your menstrual cycle as an irregular cycle or difficulty to conceive or painful periods. It can manifest as chronic anxiety, depression, self-doubt, this feeling like, I don't know if I bring anything to the table in my friendships, in my family, in my life in general. So through spiritual mentorship, at least the spiritual mentorship that I offer, it is to help people connect with that essential self, remember who they are at their core, so that whatever it is they've been struggling with, whether it's the relationships, the career, the health, etc., can finally experience calm and balance and ease. And I think that's really what we're all after. We all have things in our life that we have been trying so hard for so long that just seem like they are so challenging for us, and we don't even know why. And part of the spiritual path is waking up to, becoming aware of that why, and then cultivating a new story for yourself from within.
I mean, I just feel like you could solve all the world's problems. Like with that statement, I'm just like, anything, go to Parinaz. I would love to know, because I think that these interview episodes are so cool, because I feel like I get to even learn more about the friends that I have, and like more about their journeys, and a really different take, I think, on what we would maybe have as a normal conversation. I think with my friends nowadays, and I consider you that, like, I'll have conversations about what's going on now without actually truly exploring with them how they got to where they are. And I think that what's really special about these interviews is that I actually get to ask that. So I always think that some of our greatest gifts some come from some of our deepest pain. So I believe that Embrace Your Essence came from something within you. And like you said, you had a journey with, chronic inflammation, and I'm sure there's more to that. I'd love to know what made you so passionate about Embrace Your Essence. And I imagine that that comes from your own journey.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's right. So my spiritual journey has been learning how to embrace my essence. That is what I feel I've had to learn in this lifetime, because, as it were, I was born into a family and a culture that had a very, very, very specific and rigid set of values. And on the one hand, that's a beautiful thing. I have deep roots. My family knows what they stand for, they know what's important to them. And that's a beautiful thing. So it has held me and guided me in so many ways. And it also, from a very young age, put me into a box that was not one I chose to step into. And you don't realize that's happening. You're just a kid existing. You didn't ask to be here. You're just growing up and you're trying to survive in your family. And so you do what you're told. And when you don't do what you're told, then you get reprimanded and then you do what you're told next time. So I would say at baseline, that's where this all started, that I come from a family, a culture where you are expected to be something from the start. And I think we all have that. And sometimes it's the reverse, where no one expected anything of you, and that becomes its own box. And so that's the foundation of what I needed to heal. We'll call it, just heal it for a general term. But then every layer of me, my physical self, the body that I alluded to a moment ago, my emotional self, my heart in relationships, my mind and my spirit all needed to learn how to embrace the true me, embrace my essence. So really, I can summarize this to say every layer of me, from the outermost layer of my body to the innermost layer of my soul, was suffering because I was trying so hard to be somebody, so hard to become somebody that I thought I should be, that I thought I was supposed to be, the quote unquote right version of me, that I was twisting myself into knots, metaphorically to be that. And so every layer of me was struggling. It didn't feel at ease. It wasn't able to flow everything down to my own biological functions. I had chronic inflammation and chronic migraines because my body couldn't just exist. I was so consumed with making it exist in the right way and trying to force myself to look a certain way, to dress a certain way, eat a certain way, and then all of the other things we do, put ourselves in certain social environments. Every time you do this, and I kind of think of like a teenager, it's like, well, I'm going to go hang out with those people, I'll go to that party because it's what will make me cool. But you put your body in different environments, your body's responding to that. And I think for so long I put my body in environments that I thought it was supposed to be in, and it just made my body more and more unhappy. And so the reaction was pain, chronic inflammation. I developed migraines by age 11. I developed sciatica, which is chronic lower back pain, by age 16. I had ulcers and chronic gut inflammation by age 17. And that is just the physical representation of what was going on every single level. So from that same young age, as early as 11, I can think back to friendships in middle school where I was bending over backwards, turning myself inside out to be what I thought I was supposed to be, accepted. I can remember as early as 16 when all of my physical ailments really kind of took themselves up a notch. That's when I really kind of started dating my first serious boyfriend, and sex was involved. And I was also disconnected from that essential self emotionally. So you get into this young teenage relationship where there's sex involved and you're not connected to your body. You don't know how to honor your body. You don't know how to honor your boundaries. You don't know how to use your voice. You don't know how to show up in sex in an empowered way. And so it just happens. And before you know it, your body and heart and nervous system is like, oh my God, I've just gone through this huge experience, these huge experiences of life, of growing up, but I don't think I felt in control of any of it. I don't think I was consciously aware of myself in any of it. And I think a lot of us, most of us go through that. And then we enter into adulthood, just boom. It's like, okay, now you're 18, you're an adult, and you're supposed to then just be successful. And you're just supposed to find the life partner, and you're just supposed to have a body that's great. And it's kind of like, well, we're never trained how to do that, and we're never told how to do that. And actually we have all these experiences that kind of just happen to us that pull us away from our essential self before adulthood, that then when we enter into adulthood, we really don't know who we are and why we're here. And we don't know what our voice and intuition wants to say and how it wants to stand up for itself. And I think adulthood becomes a really stressful time because we're trying on the deepest level, the subconscious level, to do that. We're trying to figure out who we are. We're trying to learn how to use our voice. We're trying to learn how to respect ourselves and respect our intuition. But we're also expected to be adults who don't have any problems, who can just have a great job and no issues. And we have, the same amount of energy every single day somehow. And so I think we get, unfortunately, we get, kind of churned up and spit out early on in life. And we are ultimately disconnected from the essential self. That's what I went through in my life. And that's what I had to realize and come back to when everything reached a major tipping point. I had to really come back to myself. And I remember saying that to myself consciously, like, okay, you've got to figure yourself out. And I didn't know how, I didn't know what that meant, but that's where that journey started of embracing my essence. And then it became obvious to me that this is what I was here to do. Because I think maybe a lot of people can relate to this. Like, you go through fire in life and we all try to make meaning of what we go through, right? And so it's like, well, how can I make meaning, a greater meaning of my hell? And I think for some of us, a lot of us, it's, well, I can tell this story and maybe help other people too. And that's really what began my work as a spiritual mentor.
That was amazing. I have so many questions. I have so many questions because I'm so pulled in, because I think that, you hit on something for everyone, and I would be so interested as well to hear your reflections as an entrepreneur, because now I just feel like I'm seeing everything in boxes. And
Yeah.
I think actually my first question before we dive into the entrepreneurship side of things would be, I think that spirituality can get a bad rap. And I think that that maybe is a very specific box of spirituality. So I would love to know not how you're different. I feel like innately I can just feel it's different, but I would love to understand what spirituality means to you, because I think that people have a preconceived notion of what spirituality is. Like, they're thinking that you're like meditating in the woods for hours, or like in a cave and you're like only eating kale or something.
Yeah.
And that is some people's like version of spirituality, right? But I would love to know what yours is, because I almost want to take an imaginary hammer and smash all the boxes that are coming up now, because I'm just like, I'm a cuss fuck the box. So yeah, I'd love to know what spirituality itself, and I know that there is a part of that that's embrace your essence, but maybe in terms of the practices or the most important parts for you would be.
Yeah. Well, I agree. F the boxes. I think boxes keep us from our spirituality. And so, what is spirituality? To me, it's not any single ritual, practice, doctrine, anything. It is you discovering, embracing, actively connecting with who you really are. I feel when you do that, you experience freedom. I feel spirituality is about personal freedom and personal liberation for you, for the people who came before you, and for the people who will come after you. So, what is it? I think spirituality at its essence is you feeling safe enough to be who you truly are. Freedom is you feeling safe enough to be who you truly are. And it's that simple. Like it's it's such a simple thing to just be who you are, who you already are, not the person you're dying to be, because once you become that person, then everyone will respect you.
Yeah.
Not, oh, once I become that wife or that husband, that mother, then that father, then I'll be it. Feeling safe enough to just be who you already are because you know that that's enough. That is where we are free. We set ourselves free. We don't need boxes anymore to define ourselves. We don't need boxes to validate our choices, our existence, because we feel safe being us. And we will realize, I think all of us will realize, wow, I don't fit in a lot of boxes. This is something I love about the work I do. Every single person who comes to me says, I'm such a misfit. I'm such an unconventional soul. And I call that in, right? Because I call myself an unconventional soul. I call myself a misfit. But what I really truly believe is that there is not a single person out here that doesn't feel like a misfit. And if you look at that word, like misfit, there's a misfit. I don't fit. I don't fit. We all feel like we don't fit somehow. So, how is it that we all feel we don't fit? Is that a problem with us, or is that a problem with how we've been trained to look at the world? I would argue it's the latter, that we've been trained to believe that there are boxes we're supposed to wiggle into and figure out a way to fit. And that's in relationships, and that's in career, and that's in our, gender and our age and all of this stuff. Every single role we can possibly occupy in life, we're expected to fit it. And that's very elusive. Like, what is it, right? Like, what is the idea of a perfect woman, even? What is the idea of a perfect boss, a perfect wife, a perfect husband? Like, we don't actually know. It's all, frankly, a big illusion. So, spirituality is helping you cultivate the courage, the inner fuel you need to say F the boxes, as you said. I'm not going to spend my energy, my time, my precious life trying to fit into the boxes anymore. I'm going to accept that there are boxes, and I'm going to cultivate my conscious awareness to, instead of trying to fit into boxes, ask myself, who do I want to be? Who am I already? And how can I just exist rather than try to fill up a box that somebody else decided at some point in time I should fill? That seems unproductive to personal and collective well-being. So that is what spirituality is to me, in general. And I know you asked about the practices and like how do you start being spiritual? But before I dive into all of that, is there anything else you want to say about that first part?
Yeah, I think one thing I'd love to point out, because it's interesting that you were like, I attract people that call themselves misfits. I think that we definitely attract to our network women that are like, I'm weird, I'm different. They'll just say I don't fit in.
Yeah.
so it's so interesting that we both hear that. And that's probably why we get on so well, because I'm like, she
Yes.
knows, she knows,
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I was really interested in, just before we dive into looking at practices and what that would mean, is I want to just deconstruct for a moment this entrepreneur box with you, because I think that that could be really helpful. Something
Okay.
that we've been speaking about literally this week within our CEO Crowd membership is we've been talking about the difference in, we've all been reading books on business strategy. We have a book club every month. It's real fun. And it's not like a prescribed book club, but we have a relative theme. So the theme was business strategy. And it was so interesting when we had books that were written by men and books that were written by women. And it was a very interesting
Mm.
discussion around masculine and feminine energies. But what was really coming out was, it seems like society has this idea of what an entrepreneur is.
Mm.
And I'd love to understand how you deconstructed that box, because I think that will be really valuable insight.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I really would love to just be sitting in a circle of entrepreneurs right now and ask them, what are your ideas of what you think you're supposed to be as an entrepreneur? Because then I feel like we could really dig into the ways in which that may or may not be rooted in some conditioning, right? So without hearing anyone's specific, or maybe you do you have whether from yourself or from people in the CEO crowd, what are some things that you've heard them say about what they think an entrepreneur is supposed to be?
Do you know what's so interesting? We work with women that always say that they're just not doing enough. They need to
Got
try harder. That's all. It's always, I need to try harder. I need to do more.
it.
And
Mm-hmm.
then there's another side of the coin that's like, sit back, attract, everything looks
Yeah,
wonderful,
okay.
come to me. So we do hear
Mm,
both sides of the spectrum. However, I would say
mm,
the former is the more imperative voice. It's always, how do I do more?
mm,
Because to be an entrepreneur, I have to take on more into my life, which, to be fair, I think is true in a way. You are taking on a new skill set, but you could say that about if
mm-hmm.
you decide to take up, pickleball. So I
Yeah.
feel like when it comes to entrepreneurship, there's such extra weight that comes with that
Mm,
for people. And I think,
mm,
believe that this is something we hear a lot. Why have I not got to where I want to be sooner?
mm.
Like, why is it taking so long? So those are a
Okay,
few of the narratives that we hear a lot.
great. Well, starting with the last thing that you said and moving backward from there, the feeling like, why am I not where I should be?
Mm-hmm.
That right there is the expectation that you have either placed on yourself or others have placed on you. It's essentially a scripted idea of life that's based on a timeline. And that timeline might have absolutely nothing to do with your craft, your creativity, your development personally, spiritually, in business. That timeline that you have in your head might not at all balance the work that needs to be done. And so I think then the question of how do I do more becomes the thing people ask themselves, because they start to say, well, if I do more, then I'll get there faster. There being this expectation they've put on themselves from somewhere. And so then we start saying, okay, at what pace do I need to operate to become the person I believe I'm supposed to be fastest? And those questions will fundamentally rub against your essential self, because you are not asking questions about how you can be yourself. You are asking yourself the question, how do I become this idea of something fastest? That's not going to work well. And I've done that in my business over the years. I think we all fall into that as entrepreneurs.
Preach.
It's hard not to. Yeah, yeah, it is hard not to. And frankly, we fall into that probably in many roles. About around motherhood, around marriage, around again, going back to the physical body and beauty standards, I think it's everywhere. And so part of this is like acknowledging that this is everywhere. This is the life we live. This is the society. This is patriarchy. And your invitation and the sacred work is to really consciously recognize that and say, okay, maybe instead of forcing myself to become somebody on a timeline that I've essentially just crafted in my head by, from somewhere, it could be anywhere, that your idol on Instagram or, whatever, you've crafted it. And instead of doing that, instead of forcing yourself to become or to be somebody other than you are, start asking yourself, why do I feel the need to be this person right now? And I really do invite you to do that as an exercise. You could even do it now and kind of pause this and pull out a piece of paper and do that. Why do you feel the need to become somebody on a timeline other than the timeline that is naturally playing out on in your life, naturally unfolding? And that might yield responses like, if you really dig, if you're really honest with yourself and you go beyond the surface of like, well, I have bills to pay. Like, of course, we all have bills to pay. But if we go a little deeper than that, it's probably going to come up around something like, well, I want to know that this huge undertaking, entrepreneurial risk I've taken is going to pay off. I want to know I won't be called a failure. I want to know that I will be respected. I want to know that essentially it'll be worth it. It could also be, well, I'm forcing myself to become somebody on a timeline because I really actually don't love who I am at baseline, or I don't know who I am at baseline, going back to that concept of the essential self that many of us become disconnected from over the course of our early years. And so if I become this really successful entrepreneur, then that's a wonderful identity to attach myself to. So I would just love that like yesterday. But all of that really ends up not quite working because none of it facilitates you getting in touch with your essential self. And this is where it gets interesting and nuanced. And everyone is in their own individual circumstances, but you could even have an entrepreneur who actually does become that ideal image of the successful entrepreneur, whatever that is in your mind. They make 30K a month, 50K a month, 500K, whatever. They've got 2 million Instagram followers, whatever your specific idea is of success as an entrepreneur. I bet you can point to people who have done that. And even those people, at some point in time, if they have not connected to their essence, will fall into a crisis in their business and with their existence. And that is when they will come to me and say, I'm in an existential crisis where I am supposed to be someone who leads people. I've built a business on how to coach people, and I actually don't trust myself. I don't follow through on certain things. I go against myself. I don't set boundaries with my own clients. What's going on? What's wrong? There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that unless you define who you are at your essence, success and everything that comes along with that will actually start to weigh on you. And that weight is really the friction between you and your essential self.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is gold. I would love to know. I mean, I could just keep going asking you questions, but I'd love to know a little bit about your essential self.
So wow. I love that question. And I was thinking this a little bit as I was hearing you ask your question around the entrepreneur box. And there's kind of two types of entrepreneurs, it seems. One is the sit back and manifest, and the other is I'm going to go get it. I think neither camp is wrong or right. It is only you knowing yourself and your wounds and your story and your triggers and your defaults that you can start to understand which camp you want to occupy, because it allows your essential self to come forward more. So for me, as I have shared a tiny bit earlier in this conversation, I lived my life in the push. I was told, if you want something, you are going to work yourself to the bone for it. You want anything, then you have to take the most complicated, difficult route there. And, the more blood and sweat and tears you've shed, that's like the badge of honor. So for me, coming back to my essential self as an entrepreneur, but also as a human, a woman, a friend, a daughter, a sister, a partner, etc., it has been allowing myself to drop the force and invite in the flow. And for me, the specific quality that has enabled me to do that is playfulness. I have a story where playfulness was beat out of me. It was not okay to be playful. And when you're a kid and that is just your natural way, you don't realize that you're going to get reprimanded for what you've just done, because you're just being yourself. But that playful nature got very quickly, tucked away. And so as I have developed as an entrepreneur, I've really, really, really had to work at my relationship to playfulness in every way. How can I be more playful with myself in this journey? How can I be playful in my creative expression, in my podcasts, in my email, in my social media posts to people, in the way that I create offers, the way I serve my clients? How can I make it mine? That comes from the need for me to revive the playfulness within me, because it was a huge part of my essence. My essence is so playful, but I lived so many years disconnected from it that I've had to consciously cultivate it again. So that's me. And I would say for others, it's this journey of embracing your essence. That word embracing, it's an active verb. It's like you've got to go in there and really look at, what were the parts of me before the world got to me that really stood out, that stand out to me? Who was I before the world got to me? And for most of us, that's who we were before age 7 to 9. And then you start to ask yourself, okay, where did those qualities go? And then you're right there in your hands. You have the very qualities that you probably want to cultivate to be a more whole, more integrated version of yourself, which will naturally lead to you being a more effective entrepreneur and a more successful entrepreneur.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I think that I think a lot of people listening will feel this, that they can see parts of their journey now that they're like, oh, this makes complete sense. And something that I think is useful to bring up now is when you were talking about reconnecting to your playfulness, that was work. Like it's hard. Like I think that people think, oh no, that's who I am. It should be easy. And
right.
It can be so uncomfortable because, like you were saying, with all of the conditioning that happens over the years and this resistance that builds up, it can feel like the most uncomfortable thing to actually go and be playful. Or like for me, I was a little creative genius. I love to write, I love to sing. I would like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, and here we are. But I would like sing and dance. My grandparents used to live on a farm, and I would sing and dance and perform for the cows next door. It was really cute. But I loved to do that. And then someone caught me one day and I just stopped doing it because it was so embarrassing. And it's so interesting because now I love to dance. I've spoken about this on this podcast before, and I will until the end of time. I do Kinergy practices, which is like a Julianne Hough designed or inspired dance method, and it just fills me with so much joy. And I think that to do that in the first instance was so uncomfortable. To go to a dance class for me was so uncomfortable, or even to write used to feel so uncomfortable. And still, I'm a huge fan of poetry, like a total nerd for it. And I write my own and I never share it. The only person that's ever heard it is my husband. And it's very short. It's not like long poetry, just like these snippets of my life. And when I read them, I'm like, wow, that's really profound for me. And it was something that I just like would always put off. Like I knew I would like enjoy it, but I would always put it to the bottom of the to-do list. And I think it's because like that reconnection to what you call the essential self is so uncomfortable, but when you do it, it feels so good.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're describing something that's so profound and is the key to your personal success. And really, success is a feeling. Success is our perception of ourselves. And so you have the key right there in your hand, which is like, I have this creative genius in me that has been shut down for a while for one reason or another. And I am allowing that creative genius to creep through in certain moments that I have deemed acceptable. You know, I'll share with my husband. And the invitation is, what would the most courageous version of you do with that creative genius within? Because we all have, you are that you are the creative genius. You're just now in the process of trying to negotiate the times and spaces it's okay for the creative genius to come forth, which feels like a huge step compared to the phase of life where the creative genius wasn't even allowed to exist. And then the next iteration is, if I were the most courageous version of myself, how would it come forward? Because it's when we start embodying the most courageous version of ourselves that all parts of us come through, and we are no longer trying to titrate the amount of any part of ourselves that comes through. We trust that if when it comes through, it's coming through and it's good, even if it feels like the doors of the dam have opened. This is coming to mind, so I'll share it. I'm running a mastermind right now with a group of people who came on a courage and love retreat with me. The theme of the retreat was courage and love, and we were exploring what is courage? How do you show up courageously in your life? And then B, what is love? And how do we show up courageously in love? And that's a big question, because love is a huge thing, right? Love is everything. And also most of us have wounds around love. So anyways, now we're in a mastermind together, and we were just talking a couple nights ago in the call, and what came forward was this idea, like, we are good with being courageous when we know it's going to work out. And I think entrepreneurs fall into this. Oh yeah, I will be so courageous in this launch with this new product and putting myself out there, going live, whatever your thing is, as long as it pays off. but that isn't courage. Doing something because you know the outcome isn't courage, that's calculation. So really, part of this process of being a great entrepreneur, but also being yourself, the key ingredient is courage. And that's why, like, I host retreats on courage, and an entire phase of my coaching pathway when someone works with me is called courage. And there are tons of tools to get us there. I know we were supposed to have the tools conversation, but to bring it in just kind of briefly, it's like there are tools to help you become more courageous. And it's really the tools that bring you closer to yourself. So for me, that's the somatic healing yoga that I teach, it's the tantra meditation and other things too. But at baseline, those tools are all in service of self-connection. When you feel whole, then you feel like you can be courageous. When you feel fragmented, broken, you don't feel courageous. So part of this work is using your self-connection to show up courageously and let all of you, your essence, really shine.
Beautiful. watch this space for the poetry, everyone. But I think that was so beautifully articulated. And I love that reframe into, when you start doing the work, it's kind of scary. And I definitely feel like, specifically, if we come to poetry, that's where I'm at there. But it's this, like, it's almost like being called up. It's like being called to courage. I know
Yes.
that is a book, but it is like a call to courage of
Yes.
like, okay, well,
Yes.
now's the next step. And also, I love that I can share this with you because you'll completely understand. And I hope that people listening will too. That will come in its own time. And I believe that hearing from people like you and having this conversation has allowed that next step to feel easier so that I can take
Yeah.
it by myself. And I think that is the purpose of mentorship, of coaching, is that someone gives you just a little nugget that allows you to then take that next step. It's not that it was your permission and that you ever needed it, but it gives you some other perspective or some other way of thinking. And just to
Yes.
kind of close, something I've been saying to a few of my clients this past week in one-to-one is that we do work with a lot of women that are harsh on themselves, that are like, I just need to break through. And even the way that they do it when they're on the screen with me, like I can see them like almost like punching their hands together, like, I just need to do this. And then I'm like, what if you just walked through?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we
Mm-hmm.
always have to make it, one, so severe, and two, so difficult for ourselves? Like you said, you were like, I would take the most complex route to get to where I wanted to go. And that's something that's really come in for my one-to-one. So this is, this is a gift for free for everyone listening. But is this concept of, what if it wasn't about breaking through? What if it was about walking through and being kind to yourself along the way? And I think that's what this whole
Yes.
conversation has been about. And thank you for sharing also some of the practices that serve you and that serve your community. That's so powerful as well. And
Mm.
I would love for everyone to know that Parinaz will be coming along to our masterclass on the 7th of December in the CEO Crowd membership. So if you want a little bit more Parinaz, which I feel like everyone should have in their life, then the
Mm.
show notes will have all the information if you want to come and join the CEO Crowd, but also how to find Parinaz. But with that, Parinaz, would you like to share with the people, how do they find you if they don't want to go to the show notes and they just want to jump onto their Instagram?
Yes. So I am on Instagram. It's _Parinaz Shams _. And I know that might be a bit of a confusing name, but you can also search CEO Crowd, and I'm one of the people that follows that page too. So it could be that. Well, what's your Instagram handle? Is it Soul
The CEO Crowd.
CEO Crowd? Yeah.
Everything is a CEO Crowd. We are fully rebranded, and
Okay.
I'm very proud.
Congratulations. That's huge. So yeah, I am on Instagram. And then I do also have a podcast, which is called Embrace Your Essence. That's on Spotify and the other podcast apps. And then my website is just my name, parinazshams.com. So all of those are great ways to reach out and to connect.
Wonderful. And before we close out, did you have any last minute messages, drop-ins, thoughts, golden nuggets to share?
Really, I just hope that everybody listening feels that they have the courage to be who they really are today and every day moving forward.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Parinaz. We're so grateful to have had you here. We're so grateful to
Thank
see
you.
you again on the 7th of December. And
Yes, I can't wait.
oh my gosh, it's going to be so fun. What are we going to do? Give people a little nugget.
Yeah, so I feel from everything we've talked through, really diving deeper into this idea of, why do I keep forcing things? Why do I keep forcing myself to break through? And really helping you flesh that out, and then also giving you an actual practice to build that self connection from the inside, so that you feel safer with yourself, you feel more whole as yourself, so that you can move forward courageously and start to see breakthroughs in your life and in your business.
Oh, that's beautiful. Breakthroughs or walkthroughs, we'll take them all. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thank you for listening, everyone that was here. Until next week, we'll be over here believing in you at the CEO Crowd. We will see you soon.